It is my pleasure and honor to talk about Art Gahbow, our past tribal chairman. I first met Art when he attended a meeting at the Ajumug Community Center. I didn't have the opportunity at the time to talk to him, but I was there when he showed up and listened to his conversation and what he had to report to the community. I worked for Art starting in 1989 as the Commissioner of Administration for 2 terms.
I was not too far out of law school, so it was 1987 I went in, and I went to Art's office. We had a fairly rough first meeting. He was asking, what the hell are you doing here? And I was told later he thought I was an FBI agent because he couldn't figure out why an attorney would come to the reservation.
I started working for the band in 1974, and I don't think I met Art for maybe 6-8 months after I was hired. He was very busy because he was also the president of the Minnesota Chippewa tribe. And so he was doing both of these things, and he was gone all the time.
What was it like to work for Art? It was many things, but what was really cool about Art is that he sat you in his office and he talked about the history and how it impacted today and what his goals were and what he wanted to do to continue to be a sovereign nation, to be self-governant, and to be self-sufficient. Those were very exciting times. And Art was very traditional. So many of his decisions were based on the culture and the traditions of the band and how it impacted the sovereignty. When I think about sovereignty, it is the sword and shield for all tribal governments. And Art believed that very deeply. And he was very funny. So he had a lot of stories that had so much humor in it. So it really made you comfortable. It gave you the opportunity to know that today was going to be an enjoyable lesson in what Art had to talk about in terms of how do we protect the people of the Mille Lacs Band. Overall, Art was a very strong leader and a traditional leader.
Art kept sending me out to Washington to work on what became the self-governance demonstration project. The idea was the tribes could take their money from the Bureau of Indian Affairs in a big block grant. And what the tribes wanted was they wanted to reprioritize the money themselves and recreate programs that worked for their reservations. And so Art was at the forefront of that.
One of the things I remember mostly was Art talked about tribal sovereignty and about how this is an important attribute of tribal governments, that they have sovereign attributes that we need to implement. And it's an important thing about governance and how we shouldn't be subject to just everybody's rule other than the tribal's own rules about how this should happen and what should happen.
He was a fighter. I think he had this great strength of character and, was not afraid of anybody. He did some stuff that nobody else was doing. He separated out corporate decisions from governmental decisions and created a corporate commission. He took the structure of the Minnesota Chippewa tribe and said, we're going to call the chairman the chief executive, and he's going to have a cabinet, he or she are going to have a cabinet that report to them, and they're going to be implementing the laws. Then there's going to be a legislative branch, so the secretary treasurer is going to be the speaker of the band assembly, creating a form of government that would be acceptable to the United States, but was unique. These were innovative ideas he came up with.
Throughout Art's whole life that I knew him, he always wanted to make things better for the reservation. It was his goal as a leader to try to make things better. Now, did he make mistakes along the way? He did, but he also made some really valid and groundbreaking changes. Separation of powers, giving the state of the band addresses. You know, he did the first state of the band, I think, in 1984. And that was just totally unheard of. Art wanted the treaty rights litigated, and every state of the band address from 1984 on, he directed me to file a lawsuit against the state of Minnesota.
Why is it important that we remember him by having a day in his memory and his honor? Art served for many, many years as the tribal chairman of the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe. And he was a trailblazer in many issues. And he was strong about making sure that we did not give up our sovereignty, and people respected that.
I think the thing about Art is that he was a visionary. In the last year of his life, the casino started going up at Mille Lacs, and there had been a bingo hall there that employed like part-time 14 people, and then suddenly this major economic development in central Minnesota. So he didn't live to see this, but he was his vision was that everybody would get a job, and the casino came in, and suddenly people were coming back to the reservation from the city. And his vision was that we would get hunting, fishing, and gathering rights. Well, 8 years after he passed away, that came to pass with a Supreme Court decision. And he had a vision that the boundaries of the reservation would be recognized again by the state of Minnesota and the United States, and they are now.
We had many laughs and many good times and many struggles, but it was all trying to do for the betterment of everybody. We really became very close as a employee and boss relationship. I would have done anything for him. He would have asked me, I would have done it. And he was just a really wonderful person.